Good morning, appreciate doctors. Pleasure to greet you. International Internship University, IIU, is a leading virtual education system and global brand confederation with the most valuable and trusted worldwide and well-reputed and deliver innovative programs. Globally, it's a trusted name for a quality training programs. It's a committed to provide better and virtual education to all the young learners of the globe. In a short span of time, IIU has spread its wings in 185 countries and 6 continents under the strong leadership of its visionary founder, Mr. Piyash Pandit, sir, a committed and inspired social activist, a passionate educationist from the last 2 decades, providing education to the students for various social and cultural backgrounds. I'm Jorge Torres Manrique from Peru, president of the Interdisciplinary School of Fundamental Rights, Preeminente Justicia, very honored and grateful to the International Internship University and to the doctors Piyash Pandit and Herminia Rescu. In this opportunity, I talk about the interdisciplinary analysis of the corruption. Corruption, it's associated with human nature, say more than 200 years ago. However, at the time, it's become a phenomenon that negatively affects politics, probably more than any other. So that corruption is surely the aspect that reflects and causes at the same time, the greatest crisis of the models democratic. We have in organizations, especially in public ones, a practice consists of the use of the functions and means of those to the benefit, economic and otherwise, of their managers. The concept of corruption constitutes, above all, a cultural category that forms part of the legal, economic, and social discourse. About the characteristics, elements of the corrupt conduct, we have the concept of corruption. It's linked to the normative system, understood as such in a broad sense, the entire set of rules that regulate a social practice. That's to say religious, legal, political, economic, normative system soon on the actors in accordance with what has been said. It's not limited to the specific field to activity and what characterizes its competence to make decisions by virtue of the position that occupies on the normative system of the social rule it plays. Positional data are those that are acquired when accepted to assume within the normative system and must be distinguished from so-called natural that is those to apply to all individuals. Corruption, it's a crime or an offense that involves the violation of an obligation by decision maker. It is if it is accepted that the obligation are that is acquired, but by the express of tacit acceptance of a certain position. Corruption always implies the act of the disintolerance towards the normative system. The corrupt act of activity requires, in addition to the decision maker, the intervention for one or more people. It's a participatory act in which one of the parties tries to influence the behavior of the other 12 promises, threats, or benefits prohibited by the regulation systems. But about the typology of corrupt practice, we talk, for example, brevity, extortion, arrangements, fraudulent alterations of the market, embezzlement and fraud, bias, and private collusion. About the causes of corruption, we talk, for example, in preliminary way, we can consider the culture of secret. Second, the cultural elements and idolatry and messianism. About the crisis of the electoral system, we have non-existence and electoral code, lack of a strong political parties, representatives of the popular will, precarious internal democracy of political parties, lack of the permanent electoral judicial jurisdiction, lack of a civic political culture, no awareness and identification with the majestic and prevalence of the fundamental right to choose without fear and existed openness towards successful public management. About this topic, next, in order to achieve correct public management, below we propose a decalable, a strategic. We suggested that the points to be developed be strictly observed, preferably at the beginning of assuming work in a public institution, in order to ensure a very orthodox, comfortable, and safe entry. In this sense, the referred strategic consists of first, know your profession, your job, and administration. This triad implies that the first, you must have the knowledge that justifies the profession that we hold, that it's necessary to have a sure professional solvency. Second, it is necessary to have previous experience in the task to be called out. Thus, it is not conceived to present, to stay entitled and occupy a position with respect to with there is no knowledge or experience, or you cannot to go with to learn. You have to go to work and apply from the beginning that what they already know. Third, management must be now, given that it is present and every act in our daily life. A future in the present case, and it's to administer, governing, exercise authority, commanded over a territory and over the people who inhabit it. It's doing sometime through another. We will need the administration to permanently deal with our superiors, inferiors, and an institutional and interinstitutional level. Then get to know our hierarchical superiors and inferiors. It's imperative to locate it, identify them, to be able to work in a duly organic way. This facilitate that communications, not only writing, are correct, agile, and fluent, avoiding in cases eventual sanctions, delays, and functional administrative responsibility. From the various communications, there is, if it's the front lower, to higher, the modality will be a report. It's between equal ranks. Will provide, and from higher to lower memorandum. Then now to scope to our attributions and functions. For this, we need to revise and take into accounting what it's contained in the organization and functions regulations and organization and functions manual, internal regulation basically, taking through and timing knowledge will help to have adequate management of our assigned work. Also, I avoid eventual designations for work that we do not have to carry out an event sanction. In the event that the institution does not have same management instruments or that they are not updated, it must be proposed in writing within the distance, the attributions and functions in a charge and the other areas of offices and managements to the same own in order to be sent as a proposal to the general management, so what it's in a turn elevates to the presidents, to the board or the directors for the subsequent approval. As long as the aforementioned management instruments are not enforced, work must be covered, or talking is basic premise that the functions of each body of the institution carry out what corresponds to their nature. Thus, for example, this do not imply in any way that because it is an order or the hierarchical superior, the legal management or manager, please, has to do the work, the human resource manager. Then, the identify autonomy and support. It's very important. It's essential to determine whether in the exercise of the work we have the two key elements to work, without which the LB is impossible to do so. We refer autonomy and support for David Fishman in his work 360 motivation. And this that we need to have full autonomy to act and decide in the exercise of our powers and functions without counting or pressure for us to take positions in the opposite or different sense. In turn, we need the support for our superiors in order to not be a reason for the sanction or counter orders regarding our adopting decisions. It should to be noted that when these budgets are not met, it happens that our attributions and functions are unduly monopolized by them, what does nothing more than demonstrate the profound ignorance and disregard of the required meaning and effects of public management, before which, after exhausting the claims for the what happened, the logical and responsibility things is to immediately step aside, resigning from the position in order the above, beginning to administrative responsibilities and of even crimes. Then attention to emblematic case and word law. Special care must be taken with emblematic of difficult cases in order to avoid the presences of the press and their bosses. In other hand, we maintain that the joint handle and emblematic cases and workers should be assumed giving priority and the shield to the former without affecting the normal and diligent attention to the later. This although it is true that it involves an additional effort. It's official and managerial at the understanding that emblematic cases are usually very few. Then identify the work police and guidelines of said institution. It's very important to know that the management or know-how of the institute is like either intra and inter-institutional, and also become aware of the approved institutional-wide or action. By the way, this will also avoid begin eventual surprise when our work or work proposed are classified as not being in accordance with the supposed guidelines, because it is possible that objectives that the so-called incredible do not exist. This is even aggravated then the boss or bosses act by brandishing state cliché of the supposed winners, assuming them as a value without being so, but nowhere else in the face of the change and the safe personal, it happens that the change is suddenly and inexplicable. Thus, in this clear that this Gwendolyn's only exists in his imagination. And what is worse, not only did they not exist, but we are not institutional, but personal. Then identify the goals that are set the exercise. The institutional annual, semi-annual, or monthly goals must be now in order to carry out or management in function or direction of them. This will about the eventual and unnecessary investment to efforts that do not contribute to the fulfillment of the proposed goals. Then principle of objectivity. I should not be lost sight of the fact that just in the law, everything that exists in the file exists in the word of the law on everything that does not exist in the file does not exist in the word of law. It also applies in administration. Thus, we always have to communicate them in reading with the party table reception church in case that it's not longer attended because it's outside working hours, then it must be recorded via institutional email and other information technology means. It is in order to be demonstrated while avoiding possible management delays and penalties. It is understood that with a charge to regularize in rating in a first one to the next business day. Then we have now the code, the ethics and public management, especially care must be taken with the knowledge and meticulous handling of the state legal body, since otherwise functional administrative responsibility and crimes of public officials may be incurred. Then we have generate public value. Public management needs to embrace a public value generation approach. Public value, in short, it assumes that people have to ability and freedom to express their preference, rewards, the activities and results of the public administration. It also assumes that public administration have to will and the capacity to accommodate their objectives to the preference of the citizens. And more than that, it assumes that by delivering a required public value, the people why or will be willing to pay for it with money, which the vote of offering their time to collaborate with the government. Those public ballot constitutes an obligation for those in charge of public management because they work with public funds which belong to the population and therefore must be oriented towards in a general and especially to must depressed and social sectors, not for other proposed, even less so when the referred to other proposed postpone and distort the proposed that the public function embraces, whether it is delivering a full popular election or not. About the interdisciplinary explanation, we have crisis of values, for example, wrong conception of success, conception to the state coffers is a booty, then legal ignorance, in addition, the almost null identification with fundamental rights and constitutional law. Then ignorance of public management, as well as the principles that inspired them. Finally, like conclusions, we have the corruptions present a nature that it's difficult to define, but it can be understood from its various manifestations and interdisciplinary quintessence. Corruption is an endemic evil which is present in all institutes, not just state institutes. The population is largely identified with white corruption. This constitutes the main obstacle of the fight against it. Corruption causes worrying damage for the population, especially to those who have the least, since back items and diminish or use for private purpose. Public management presents a several crises, which has to the basically will with the ignorance of all to carry out appropriate public management for the benefit of the administrative ones. The fundamental right, which we have called to choose without fear, annexing openly constitutes a capital right that assists all vulnerable groups in the electoral seat, that it's the population as a whole. And it has violated the application not only in electoral periods. The crisis of values is a factor that they contribute of the violation of the aforementioned fundamental right. The fundamental right is to choose without fear, and next instant openly embrace the natural of the content right. Therefore, it involves the integration and relationship with additional fundamental rights, for example, to peace and tranquility, to correct management public, to transparency, access to public information and accountability, to the free development of peoples, to the best right of the voter, to the legitimacy of the right to choose. The fundamental right to choose without fear annexes openness also covers the principles of admiration. For example, in a good faith, good administration, public value, and also a relationship with philosophy. Depending recognition of the fundamental right to the choose without fear unexistent openness contributes not only to harm and to choose a citizenship, but also generate systematically the economic resource belonging to the state, and thus also to advance and recognize of the corruption. Corruption is all generate is a consequence of an electoral system in crisis. Finally, like suggestions, we have the incalculation of values in education center, basically from the initial years, in way in which that the values can assimilate up to 12 years. Implementation of public policy with in the interdisciplinary approach in order to be able to combat corruption from its natural, determine the case of corruption, and carry out the corresponding state policies aimed the contracting them, teaching in education center, public management fundamental rights, the legal and constitutional recognition of the fundamental right, they choose without fear and exist openness, training for actors in the administration of electoral justice and the electoral system, reward the fundamental right to choose without fear and exist openness, which is a system by all borders in the four-dimensional extremes. Inclusion in education levels of dissemination and promotion subjects, fundamental electoral rights, values, non-partition and political culture, responsibilities, citizenship, the urgent issuance of an electoral code, the urgent implementation of permanent electoral judicial jurisdiction, carry out urgent actions to correct and combat the origin and cause of corruption. This in order to reduce and eradicate in it an assertive profession specialized manner. Great cell in legal specialization in legislative commissions. Urgently, finally, urgently constitutional recognition of the fundamental right to choose without fear and anxiety, openness. Very grateful for your attention. Thank you very much.